What's going on, everybody? It's Mario from Highlander TCG, and I've come to give you guys my double deck for Hirana and Akino. This is going to be two no limit decks, and this is just to be updating the set three decks that I've been wanting to kind of deck profile. But we're going to start off with the Hirana list, but first we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the new cards that we're playing that you probably wouldn't see. The first card is Ray Absolute Zero. This card wasn't used as often in most no limit decks, but in this format, the format is pretty big on more defensive options. So Absolute Zero kind of fits in. You are playing for probably another turn. So Rending Blade kind of does lose value because you're not looking to aggro as much, but you're looking to play just a little bit more mid rangey, a little bit more tempo, and so that's why we're kind of on, or that's why we're on Absolute Zero at the moment. The next card is Armlight. Um, so this is just the new folklore for white. Basically, when you life burst it, you can choose up to two of your opponent's signature and they can't attack, and you can draw a card. And then we have Burning Curiosity, which is pay one during the main phase. When you use this piece, you can exceed for four, which means you can remove four cards from underneath your outrigs, and then you can vanish targets in your opponent's field. And if you do, uh, if you paid the exceed for four, you exclude it instead. So this just gives us a pay one removal, and the exceed cost is pretty important because in Hirana we don't have anything that exceeds. So this is how we're going to be using our exceed, and removing a Signy from the game is pretty important because there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot more defensive Signy, so this just gives us a way to get rid of them. And so now that I've explained these, we're going to go ahead and move on into the actual deck list here. Um, so once again, like I said, we are playing a little bit more tempo kind of mid range. We are still doing aggro in the early game, but once we hit up to three, we're playing a little bit more slower and on pace. But for the most part, we're not really running that many new cards. We're only running basically two new cards. We're running the Burning Curiosity and then the Armlight. We are on Arc Glim because the trigger is good, and like I said, it helps just play into the mid game better. We're still on pretty much four copies of everything else with the four Zhao, four Romel, four Lancelot, the four Rose Quartz, and then the two Nobunaga, two Percival. Rose Quartz is even better now because you do want to be filtering out your vanillas. Sita's still a great trigger. Um, but yeah, and the Elric deck pretty much stay the same. Like I said, Running Blade is not as useful anymore, just in my personal experience in this format. Like I said, it's a little bit more slower, and there's a lot more better defensive options. So having that other defensive Elrig is actually pretty good now, and it's just so that you don't lose very fast coming towards the late game because this deck can now get out steam just a little bit more. Um, but yeah, I think Raining Blade is still a great card, but I think Absolute Zero is definitely becoming stronger in this format specifically. And then Burning Curiosity is really good with Zhuge Liang running around. You can exclude it from the game so it can't resummon itself. You can get rid of the 12k Ichikishimaros on turn two since you can't Inferno them anymore. But you do have a lot of outs now, so just once again you're just jam packed with removal, and this deck basically stayed the same for the most part. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about the Akino deck now. We're gonna explain two cards before we go into the list, but the first two cards is we have Penlight and Miracle Draw. So Penlight's the new level 3 that comes out of this set. It's at the beginning of your opponent's turn. You can target their Elrig, and then they have to basically pay 2 in order to attack. This is a very good defensive Signy, and putting this in the center with Akino makes it a 12k with Shadow, which is very good. Meaning it's just a little bit harder to remove. And honestly, Akino did get pretty decent support this set with just these two cards alone. And with the list, we'll talk a little bit more on it. But other than that, it has a life burst ability, same as Arcwind, so you can bounce it up, Signy, or you can draw a card. And alongside with Arcwind, this gives you 8 total of this exact life burst, which is like a really good one. And then Miracle Draw, once again, has an exceed cost of 4, but you get to check 5, add up to 1 card from among them, and then if you pay the exceed cost, you get to add 2 instead. So it's basically like a good dig. We're only running a couple copies of these just to help us find that servant or whatever we need. And it is our only way to pay out for exceed, so it's just letting us use the exceed cost effectively in this set. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to the list here. So just running down the Elric deck, we have the draw 2 Ray. Once again, just good card advantage is what we like to see. We are running the Absolute Zero. This just probably the best defensive Ray. Not running the aggressive Ray because we don't need to. Our Rana is fairly aggressive. We are running the stage to vanish level 2 or less, and then we're running the power on to vanish anything or and draw 2 or enter charge 2. This is something you can use aggressively because The you do need the card advantage a little bit more in this deck, and the enter charge can come up too, and plus the removal is like very, very nice. But this can easily be Hirana Stamp. Just to pay one to remove on your opponent's attack phase is pretty good. So Hirana Stamp is definitely like a fairly solid option. I haven't used it as much, but I've just been having some pretty decent success with Power On. And then as for the pieces, we are running the Glory Grow. Pretty obvious. No need to explain this for our playing no limit. We are running Go to the Top. This helps us search our servant. Plus, playing into our game plan, we do want to deny our opponent as much enter as possible. So, like, Go to the Top plus Akino once per game effectively denies 5 enter because you're not banishing them. So, we have a lot of bouncing in this deck, and we're just trying to play on the game plan of just removing as much enter as we can from our opponent in like one fell swoop. They happen to have the Xeno cluster, then so be it, but searching for that servant's pretty important. Looking at the triggers over here, the 4 Hanio, this just helps us take out more of our servants and just help us trend through our deck a little bit. The life burst is very good too for Deafening Inferno. Very obvious we're playing no limit, so we might as well abuse it. And then we have the new Penlight and then the Arcwind. Easily our best level 3 defensive Signies. We can drop both of these down on turn 3 when we decide to grow our power on, open up a lane, and then we're good to go for our next turn. We have 2 Shadow Signies. And I believe I forgot to mention that Penlight also can get Shadow Signy if you use the spell during the turn that it was played until the end of your opponent's next turn, which is pretty important why you play the Blade in the center with Akino, so they can't be banished by just something like a Deafening Inferno. Um, but yeah, once again, just the combination of these two with 2 shadows, plus you're making it so your opponent has to pay 2 to attack, you have like a very good defensive board. And this deck quite often can um, have 3 shadows on board with like something like Zhao Yun plus double of these, or 2 of these and a Ma Chao. And so as for the non-triggers, we're running 4 Zhao, 4 Percival, 4 Ma Chao, 4 Lancelot, 2 Miracle Draw, and then 2 Rose Quartz. Zhao Yun makes sense. They were in white, we might as well play it. It's good. Keeps us insulated for early game. Same thing with Percival, dual color, and a 5k stat line for the early game. Ma Chao is pretty good in this deck because you can take it up in the center, make it a 12k with its effect online. And then the optional to pay 5 removal is pretty, it does come up sometimes. And then for Lancelot, we are in red, so might as well play it. The card's broken. And then 2 Miracle Draw, we did talk about this earlier. We're only playing 2 because we don't need that many copies. This round's at 6 spells, which should be enough to be able to turn on Penlight when you need it. And then 2 Rose Quartz. Once again, this is no limit only, so we do get access to this, and we might as well play it. The filtering does come up quite a bit because you do want to be cycling for very specific board setups. And so this card definitely enables that, and just having more removal is always good. And so that pretty much wraps up the both of these lists. I'm just going to talk about some honorable mention cards that you could be playing in both lists. It was very hard for me to try to separate them because they both have access to them. So we're just going to talk about all the cards here. So running down the blue cards, which, like I said, both decks can have access to. You can play the Trouble Folklore package. Just basically running the 8 tap down triggers, which are very good. Trouble gives you a little bit more draw power. And then Folklore, once again, if you just want to be playing more blue with the Trouble, you can do that. You have Helium, which is another good defensive blue Signy. When it's basically vanished anywhere that's not combat, you can tap down your opponent's Elrig. Um, you can slot this in just as like a tech, and this is perfectly fine. Ishiki Shimaru, Typo, and can both be played in both lists. Ishiki Shimaru is a very good Signy for level 2. Just gives you a defensive stat line of 12k, and then you get to scry one. So like in your Hirana list, if you want to get like a tanky board at level 2, you can with this. And then same thing with Typo, just 7k level 1 if you have level 1 in your enter on your opponent's turn. And then both of their triggers are both very strong. And then we have stand up, which is mainly for Akino. Just pay 2 to be able to add back a guard. This can help with your consistency to add a guard, and then it has a decent life burst to bounce a up Signy. And then for the red Signies, we have Zapar. This is an on play. You can sack a red Signy on your field to vanish a Signy of 3k or less on your opponent's field. This just helps with more removal for like Hirana deck. You can basically round out that 8 Romels if you'd like to. And then this next card is, I believe it's called Lupico. Lupico. I don't remember the full name, but its effect as long as it's in your center. The grow cost of your Elrigs is decreased by 1, which is pretty strong. And then during your turn, whenever one of your Elrigs grows, you can target one of your opponent's 8k or less power Signies and then pay 1 if you do vanish it. I couldn't necessarily find the space for this card, but it's definitely a very strong one. That's highly worth considering. I just wasn't able to have much success with it in early on, but I'm definitely going to come back around to try and playing this card because this card is like I said, very very strong. Just reducing the grow cost of your L rigs is very good, and then having more removal on your turn. Once again, just a very strong effect overall. But it does need to be in your center, so you can't stack it. The next card, which is this level 2, this is another life burst tech. You can target once again your opponent's field with 12k or less, and then you can discard a card and banish it. This can pretty much round out more red for your Hirana deck. And if you just want pure removal life burst triggers and not stall, this is a very good option. I was playing this on my initial list along with Sita just to have maximum amount of removal, and it worked out pretty decently. But I just decided that the life burst of Armlight or Folklore was just more impactful in terms of like the aggro mirror, but it's definitely a viable option. And then the last card here, which is Eternal Influence, it has another exceed cost of 4, so you can remove 4 from the from all your L rigs underneath your L rigs. And then you can vanish a Signy with 8k or less. And if you paid the Exceed 4, you can just vanish anything. Pay 1, vanish anything is like very strong. This is a card that I'm definitely going to try more. I just didn't, I wanted to use my Exceed cost for like Burning Curiosity and then the other spell, Miracle Draw. But this is a very, very strong option. Vanishing 8k or less is pretty easy to do. It's basically like another Inferno. But yeah, very, very considerable option. And so just kind of looking back over at the decks, and just wrapping things up. Just let me know what you guys think about how you feel about these deck lists. Let me know like what changes that I could possibly make to them. What more considerations that I cover everything that needed to be covered in this video. And if you try out the list, let me know what you guys think of it. Like, how did it perform, and what changes did you possibly make to it? Because this definitely can be explored more. There's a lot of good cards in these colors, so there's definitely different ways to build it. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next Double Deck Tech.